Welcome to a special edition of the Will You Stop podcast. We are here live on a Tuesday night, and we're going to do a Raw and SmackDown review. Avi, what's up? How are you?
I'm doing well. Interesting week this week for both shows. Caught Raw last night. Caught the ending of SmackDown tonight. I'm actually catching up on it now. I was at the gym earlier. Let's get right into it. So last night, Raw. I'm not going to say it was a bad show. It was fairly entertaining. The base of the whole entire show is centered around who Seth Rollins' next opponent's going to be at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. So they gave us two triple threat matches, which weren't bad matches. I just thought there might have been a better way to do this. I'm a fan of the gauntlet match. I know you don't want to overdo the gauntlet match. It does take some time. But another way they could have gone around this is, add in two more guys and have, a quick 8-man tournament last night. That would have been a little more fun to watch. Triple threat matches are kind of one of those matches. If you do it a little bit too much, kind of ruins the special, so to speak. Triple threat matches are always a good time. They're fun to watch. They kind of help feuds move along. They also kind of, help certain guys not get beat. So that they have their usefulness. I just feel like when you do two in the same show, you're kind of overdoing it a little bit. As far as the rest of the show goes, Ricochet and now you got Robert Roode. I like him as a heel. Always felt like he should have been a heel. I don't like seeing Ricochet getting jobbed out like that. Think maybe they could have gone a little bit better. If they wanted to job somebody out, they could have brought anybody else up for that. Jobbing out Ricochet is not going to help him. I like his character. I think he has potential. Jobbing him out to Robert Roode, to me, made absolutely no sense last night. Viking Raiders now, as they're called, came out, squashed the Lucha Party. I like it. I like what they're doing with those guys. And there was one of the match. I'm not remembering what it is right now.
They had a women's match, I believe.
I feel like there was one more singles match, not the main event with Corbin and Styles. I feel like there's one more singles match. Cesaro and what's his name? From 205. They had a match last night. Actually,
Cedric Alexander.
Yeah, that actually was a decent match. I did not expect that to be the match it was. That actually wasn't a bad match. I've always been a fan of Cesaro. I just think he kind of gets dumped in this mid-card hell, so to speak. But listen, the guy's a solid worker, quality worker. Crowd's always been into him. And last night, him and Alexander actually had a pretty good match. I was shocked. I did not think it was going to be a good match like that.
Yeah, Cedric's a good talent. He comes from the 205 Live. He's been bounced around the indies and such. And now they're bringing, it seems that 205 Live is now becoming a second tier right above NXT before the main roster. We see it with Ali on SmackDown, and now Cedric's over here on Raw. And I think he's better than Ali, honestly.
You know me. I think both of us have kind of made it quite clear neither one of us are big Ali fans. Not to say I don't think he has a future in the company. I think he does, obviously. I think, obviously, Vince sees something in him. I don't think he's bad. I just don't think he's ready right now for prime time, so to speak. But I'll say this. Last night's episode, at first glance, I didn't love it. But the more I watched it again today, it really wasn't a bad episode of Raw. The only issue I could say I have with it is we're seeing a little bit too much randomness. When I watch Raw now, it kind of reminds me of I want to say Nitro, maybe mid-99 to late 99, when the shine of the NWO era kind of started to fade out a little bit. Goldberg at this point was already getting fucked by the people booking it. They just weren't hitting that chord anymore. And you can kind of tell they were just kind of throwing random matches together, trying to hope something sticks. And that's how I kind of feel like Raw was last night. I feel like you just had a couple of, you had the two triple threat matches, some other random matches, a squash with the tag team match, and then your main event was basically Corbin and Styles. And you know me, I think both of us agree we're both big Styles fans. I can't figure out for the life of me what Baron Corbin is doing in this main event slot. Like, can you please explain this to me?
The only thing I could think of is that he's curried favor with Vince. I mean, obviously Vince books everything, but you know what? Corbin, would you call him a heat magnet, or is he more of like an X-Pac heat magnet?
Honestly, it's hard to tell, and it depends. There are weeks where I look. Here's the thing. Once he gets in the ring, he's really not that bad. He puts on a decent match. He moves well. He's a big guy. I wouldn't mind if they changed his outfit. He kind of reminds me of one of those waiters you would see in a diner somewhere in Astoria. But I kind of feel like if you change the outfit, the gimmick isn't bad. I mean, he's basically a prototypical big, tough guy. But the guy doesn't move bad. I just don't think they have him in the right slot right now, so to speak. There are weeks where I kind of feel the heat where, okay, he's getting some heat. And there are weeks where I feel like, okay, get this guy off TV. It's hard to tell with him. I think if he's thrown in the right angle, he'll get the right heat. But right now, I just don't see a place for him in this main event scene. It's like Mysterio also. What is Mysterio even doing in this whole scene right now?
It's, to me, I think that you're using his name value to throw him out there. They just did the Superstar shakeup. They bring Mysterio over. They throw him out there. Mysterio wasn't winning that match. He was there to take the fall, so Joe didn't look weak. If AJ lost, AJ didn't lose weak. And that's the same thing with Corbin. I think you didn't want to put AJ against Drew McIntyre on Monday Night Raw right away because that's a money feud down the line. And you don't want to kill The Miz again after losing at WrestleMania. So why not have Corbin be in that Kane position, that main event jobber position?
Right, but here's my issue with everything now. Now you're kind of giving us Styles and Rollins way too soon. That's a SummerSlam match.
Yeah. They shot their load on that.
That's a big four pay-per-view match. That's Survivor Series, SummerSlam, Rumble, even WrestleMania. That is not a match you throw on some random bullshit pay-per-view in the middle of May. That to me is an injustice to Styles, Rollins, and honestly the fan base. I mean, if you want to give us a May pay-per-view, you know what? You could have put Miz in that slot. I would have no problem with that. I think Joe and Rollins is another big four pay-per-view main event, to be quite honest with you. And Joe's got a belt. Let him defend it. By the way, belt now is the term they can use all of a sudden. I'm happy.
Yeah, I know.
I'm actually happy about that. But let Joe go defend the belt, and let's see what you can do with that. But Styles Rollins, that's a big four pay-per-view situation. Joe Rollins, same thing. I think you could have gone with Miz Rollins, and I would have been fine with that. Honestly, Corbin Rollins, I would have been fine with also. Just get an outfit on Corbin already. Mysterio, like I said, doesn't belong anywhere near there. I think your best bet for this pay-per-view coming up would have been a Miz Rollins match. Face versus face doesn't sell well, but you know what? Honestly, it's a bullshit pay-per-view Money in the Bank. Nobody cares about your world title matches at Money in the Bank. They care about the Money in the Bank matches.
This is true.
So honestly, Styles Rollins, that should have been your SummerSlam main event. That to me is a money main event that you end the pay-per-view with those guys. You don't throw it on some bullshit pay-per-view in May. What I think is going to happen is I think they're going to do like a replay of the Styles Nakamura Styles Joe feud where they have, a 3-match pay-per-view, spurted out. So if you go Money in the Bank and they wind up in a double, DQ, and then you go in the June pay-per-view and it's a double count out, maybe skip July and go to SummerSlam. Okay, I have no problem with that. Another idea, just to throw it out there, is maybe they like I said, squash this pay-per-view, squash the next one, and then at SummerSlam, those two guys go at it in the 2 out of 3 falls or an Iron Man match. I can live with that. If you're going to spread it out over a couple of pay-per-views, I'm fine with that. But if these guys meet at this pay-per-view and that's the last time you go with it, you're really doing an injustice to the whole product.
Yeah, they totally blew their load. They hot-shotted this. Like you said earlier, this should have been a SummerSlam main event. This should have been built. They should have kept them apart and built this over the next 3 months.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, you could have gone with the June pay-per-view as Miz or even Corbin against Rollins. You could have put Styles in a feud with anybody else. The truth is, I think at this point, you have to keep Styles and Rollins away from McIntyre and away from Joe for that matter. I think those four need to stay away from each other. What I wouldn't mind is at some point, I think you go McIntyre, Joe, Styles, Rollins. Not now. Should have been a couple of months from now. Because those four, like I said, keep those four away from each other. Those four right there are your money feuds right now on Raw. I think a good way to build that up, to be quite honest with you, would be, say, Rollins and Styles in a tag team feud with McIntyre and Joe. That'd be a great way. That'd be a great main event for a Raw or even a pay-per-view, to be honest with you. Those four going at it in a tag team match.
What if that's your July main event leading into a 4-way at SummerSlam?
Too early. Those four should be kept away from each other as long as possible. Honestly, those four should have touched each other till WrestleMania, to be quite honest with you. That should be your Raw title matches at WrestleMania. Joe McIntyre, Styles, and Rollins. McIntyre and Joe, to me, is a money feud. Money feud. The way Joe moves and the way McIntyre moves, those guys are made for each other. As a matter of fact, that should be a feud that goes all the way through Hell in the Cell. You throw them in special. That should be a no holds barred, last man standing. Those two guys right there, Joe and McIntyre, could literally be one of those legendary long ass feuds where they go through every special stipulation type match, let the belt go back and forth a few times. That really could be your money feud on Raw if you really think about it.
And it does a secondary thing. It builds up that United States title. It's been seen as a joke for the last few years.
Well, aside from that, it also takes away a lot of pressure from Rollins. If you think about it, all you really have is Rollins and Styles. I mean, you could throw Miz in there at some point, but you don't have much for Rollins to work with. I think you can actually even distract the fans for a little bit by just having Joe and McIntyre go at it, but they're going to have to spread that feud out. That could be an old school money feud if done correctly.
Very, very true. Very interesting. I mean, right now they got the 4 top guys in WWE on Raw.
Yeah. Listen, Rollins and Styles, they can easily pull off an hour-long match, whether it be, like an HBK Cena match on Raw that went 55 minutes a couple of years ago, or, they want to do an Iron Man match. Those two guys can easily pull it off. I'm not worried about those two. Joe and McIntyre is a different kind of feud. You kind of need something there. Here's why. Both guys can carry a good match, but I'm not sure how far they can take the match. You understand what I'm saying? Like where Styles and Rollins can go 45, 50 minutes deep in a match and keep you at the edge of your seat, especially with the way those two guys move. I don't know if Rollins and McIntyre is meant for that. I mean, Joe and McIntyre are meant for that. Not to take away from McIntyre at all. I think Joe is the better worker overall. We've seen his body of work over the years. Don't know if McIntyre can pull off that 35, 40-minute classic. So I think you kind of have to throw something in there to get those stipulations going. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you. I find it funny that you mentioned that HBK and Cena Broadway, because I think today's actually the anniversary of it.
I believe you're right. I think it was today. Back, what was that, 2007 or 6, I believe it was?
Correct.
Right, somewhere around there. But, like I was saying, with Joe and McIntyre, I think you need something there. My fear, by the way, with this, to be quite honest with you, is where's Lashley been lately? Because I do not want him popping up in any feud all of a sudden.
Yeah, he wasn't even on TV at all this week. Neither was Braun, as a matter. Then I think about it.
Yeah, it's been a while since Braun hasn't been on Raw. I'd like to keep Braun away from all 4 of those guys for as long as possible. I'd like to keep Lashley out of there also. Truth be told, you know what? June pay-per-view, just to waste some time, a Lashley-Rollins match wouldn't be a bad idea. What I'm afraid of is they're going to try to rekindle the Braun-Joe feud that was about to kick off on SmackDown. A little too early for that also. I think right now, keep Braun in some bullshit program. Let him throw EC3 around for the next couple of months, if anything. I think Joe and McIntyre really should be your kind of focal point feud, now that I think about it, for Raw, because you could throw them into a bunch of stipulations, and you can kind of throw something in there to make it a heated feud. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you.
I think Braun, let him beat up on EC3 and a couple of guys for a few months. I think with Lashley, just let him just job out to Rollins or those guys or anybody else in the main event scene for a while. Try to keep Styles away from there. I kind of like what Raw's doing. Like I said, the more I watched last night's episode, the more I realized it wasn't that bad of an episode. So you know what? I'm good with it. The 2 triple threat matches, like I said, I think they could have been done a little better, a little bit of overkill. Overall, though, I would give Raw a solid B minus for last night. We'll get to it right now. The obvious big talk of Raw is Bray Wyatt and that very interesting vignette. I don't know what to make of it yet. It kind of has that really creepy, almost pedophile feel to it. It was almost like Mr. Rogers, gone bad. We discussed it all day today. I mean, I can see where you're going, where it could be that evil Mr. Rogers type character, which I always said, listen, Doink, the evil clown, was too early for its time. That should have been a character during Attitude. An evil clown. What's scarier than that? Mm-hmm. With this, it can go one of 2 ways. There's no third way it can go. Either it's going to be a hit and make up for how badly fucked up Bray Wyatt got booked when he was world champion. Because both of us were big Bray Wyatt fans. I was a huge Bray Wyatt fan. I loved the character, loved what they did with it. I think they completely fucked that one up and they took the belt off him. That being said, it can go one of two ways. Either A, it takes Bray to that next level where they repackage him properly and he's a true psychopath that really just scares the crap out of kids and adults for that matter, or B, they really completely fucked this up.
I mean, he could honestly be what Doink would have been if it was 30 years later. That creepy Mr. Rogers, evil Mr. Rogers character. There, I was reading somewhere someone was even mentioning maybe even a Jekyll and Hyde type thing where, you know, he's a face, but then, you know, something switches, he becomes a heel. I mean, like I said, I've been saying since last night, it's too early to tell. Let's see where they're going with this. But if they wanted to get Bray's name out there and get people talking, it's working.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, that's been the talk of the town like the last, 24 hours. Which is kind of funny because I've always felt that, SmackDown Live, ever since it went to Tuesday, was put in such a bad position. Because if you think about this, follow me on this. If Raw has a really good show on a Monday night, which doesn't happen too often, but it does happen. If Raw has a solid show, a good show, SmackDown's got to live up to that. And I kind of feel like it's almost like they're late in the race because it's the very next day. On the other hand, if Raw is terrible the night before, it's almost like you're looking at SmackDown to salvage the week. And then after that, your week is pretty much done. I think the move for SmackDown the Friday night is a big help for everybody involved. Because even if Raw sucks, by the time you get to Friday, you're over it. Okay, great. Now we got SmackDown. And if Raw's great, by the time you get to Friday, okay, we're over it. Now we have SmackDown. It's almost like SmackDown doesn't have to live up to anything anymore or help us out for that matter.
Yeah, it's like following up a great match and you're supposed to live up to it. You can't do that. That's
right. But back to the Bray thing. Listen, I'm not a huge fan of repackaging wrestlers. I think that when you repackage a wrestler, you're kind of shitting on their first character, but you're kind of shitting on the fans also in a sense, because you're basically saying, yes, all we're doing is playing a character. We know you're a character. We know you're not real, but don't make it so obvious. And it goes back to last week when I was saying characters evolve. Characters have to evolve, and that could sometimes take years. Could last night's vignette just been the evolution of Bray's character? Maybe. It could also be the downfall of Bray's character. If you think about it, you look at Dean Ambrose, perfect example. Dean Ambrose was with that company about 8 years almost. I think 2011 is when he first popped up in NXT.
Something like that, yeah.
Gets on the main roster around 2012, right? So now it's been 7 years. Roman Reigns, his character evolved. Seth Rollins, his character evolved more than anybody. Dean Ambrose is the same character today or on Sunday when he had that last interview that he was the day he walked through that curtain the first time on Raw, if you think about it.
Yeah, he didn't change at all. No matter from the Shield to his singles run to his heel run, it was all the same guy. Nothing changed.
The in-ring work didn't change. The interviews didn't change. Nothing about him changed except for his haircut. Rollins changed a lot. His character's really evolved to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm okay with him as the champion right now. I'm not crazy about it. I don't think he's the guy, quote unquote, so to speak, but I think he's worthy of walking around with that belt. I don't think anyone's going to have an issue with Rollins as champion. He can carry a good match. His promos are getting better, but the whole point is his character is evolving. And I think once he turns heel again, which inevitably is going to happen, just the way wrestling works, as you know, I think he's going to find his niche with his next heel turn. I think he's a natural heel, and I think his next heel turn is going to be that one that kind of takes him over the top. Roman Reigns goes to SmackDown. I think this is where Reigns maybe finds himself. He's obviously the guy Vince is pushing the most. He's got the movie role coming up with The Rock. He's going to get that special Rock magic, so to speak. He's going to be the focal point for the new Fox deal. Roman Reigns has evolved tremendously. His mic work has gotten far better. It's not great, but it's gotten a lot better. His in-ring work was never an issue, but that's also gotten a lot better. He has to work with certain people, but Roman Reigns' in-ring work was never an issue. You look at Dean Ambrose, he is literally 1,000% the same person that walked through that door or down that rampway or down the staircase the first time the Shield ever showed up. And that says a lot about him leaving in the sense where, okay, maybe he just, hate to say it, but couldn't make it on that big stage. They gave him every title under the sun. They put him in feud after feud after feud that were top-notch feuds. They put him with the Shield, without the Shield, around the Shield, under the Shield, on top of the Shield. They gave him every opportunity to succeed. It's his fault he didn't succeed. How does that sound?
I agree with you. I agree. It's his fault. He didn't evolve. He didn't change. He didn't attempt. He was lazy. In my opinion, Dean Ambrose was lazy in the whole fact that he didn't change his gimmick. Not his gimmick. I take that back. He didn't change his style to evolve his gimmick.
Exactly. The guy did not evolve one bit. I'll give you another one that hasn't evolved at all. Two people that haven't evolved at all. And you know what? They can take that ball and run with it. Botcha and Bailey. Sasha Banks is the same bullshit, boss this, boss that attitude that literally we saw in NXT. Bailey has not changed one bit. To me, Bailey can salvage herself. Go heel. If she snaps and pulls that old school Bob Backlund heel persona, I think she'll be fine. With Botcha, where can she honestly go at this point?
She's done. To me, she's done with all this extra outside stuff. I think she's done. I think they're just going to have her sit out her contract because she's dangerous in the ring. She hasn't changed. She isn't that good on the mic.
I'll be honest with her. Whoever's in her ear has got to wake her up and say, listen, there's no guarantees AEW is going to sign you. I can honestly see her winding up in Impact. Because honestly, I don't think AEW has a space for her. She's dangerous in the ring. Her mic work is decent at best, but her character is another one that hasn't evolved one bit. But, back to Ambrose, that character didn't evolve, and you know what? Things didn't work out for him because he didn't want them to work out. You can't just characters, like I say, they evolve. You look at every great character ever, even not so great characters. Take Goldust, for instance. Goldust, Dustin Runnels, was a mainstay on the WWE roster since 1995. Give or take, he left here and there or whatnot. But that's still, you're going back now 24 years. That character evolved tremendously. It had to. Look at Brian Pillman back in the day. He started out as this chubby-cheeked, baby kissing, as white as can be baby face. And look how he ended up. To me, he was the personification of attitude. He lived. I think that guy would have been a major, major star. And I'll tell you right now, I think he could have been a crossover star as well.
Yeah, if he didn't get into that Humvee accident and destroy his ankle, him and Austin, I think, would have had a money feud. Back in the day, him with the Hart Foundation would have been money more than it was. Brian Pillman was just that one that hurts me because he had so much to go with in WWE and that loose cannon character. And honestly, I don't even think Vince knew what to do with that.
Here's the thing about that loose cannon character. Honestly, speaking of Dean Ambrose evolving, he should have been watching tapes of Brian Pillman. Now that I think of it. If you really think about it, had that guy sat down, if I'm Dean Ambrose's friend, I tell him, watch Roddy Piper back in the day. Watch Brian Pillman. That's where your character needs to go. That's where your character should have gone. You're portraying yourself as this, lunatic fringe, et cetera, et cetera. That's where your character should have gone. You should have been watching old videos from ECW, even WCW at the end when he was the Rogue Horseman. And then WWE when he first came in, or Brian Pillman. You should have been watching old videos of Roddy Piper as he slowly turned face. That's the stuff you should have been watching, to be honest with you. But he obviously didn't care enough about his character. And the truth of the matter is, you know what? I was never a huge fan. I'm kind of glad he's gone, because if you can't evolve over an 8-year period, what are you doing? 8 years is a lifetime in wrestling. You look at some of your greatest characters ever. The Undertaker debuts in 91. Look at his character by 99. 8 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Michaels is my favorite example. He turns heel for the first time in 92. Let's look at him 8 years later in 99. Granted, he's out with the back injury, but look how much that character evolved. I mean, Randy Orton, Triple H. Look at Triple H. He debuts in what 94 in WCW. Look at his character 8 years later in 2002. How's that for an evolution? Going from an angry Frenchman to that.
That's funny. Evolution. No pun intended.
No pun intended. Seriously. John Cena. Look at John Cena's debut. That was what, around 2003?
Yeah.
Look at him by 2011. Edge makes his debut 98. 8 years later, look at him in 06.
Top heel in the company.
Okay. So you look at your character. Listen, look at Rollins when he first shows up till now. Look at Reigns when he first shows up till now. So back to the whole Bray Wyatt thing. If this is part of Bray Wyatt's evolution as a character, I'm all for it. But if this is going to be a complete 180 to a different character, that's where you're going to insult the fans' intelligence if you think about it. And that's where you may lose on this one. So I'm kind of hoping it's more of an evolution than a character repackaging, because that's where you're going to get hurt. I think if you want to bring somebody up from NXT and repackage them, I'm okay with that. If you want to bring somebody from Impact and repackage them, I'm okay with that. But if you're going to repackage somebody you had as a world champion, now you're kind of insulting the fans' intelligence. You understand what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying. I also think it is an evolution because it's not like they're ignoring his previous character, because they even showed the cutout.
Right.
So I think it is going to be a type of evolution more than it's so much a repackaging.
Listen, like I said, I'm all for it. I'm a big Bray Wyatt fan. We'll have to see where this goes. You know, I mean, if you look at it, Sami Zayn last night, that's somebody we didn't discuss. His promo ran a little long. I like where he's going with this. I really do. The insulting of the fans. I mean, if you think about it, he's kind of shooting off the cuff, like having a normal conversation like we are right now. It's not really a shoot. It's basically telling the fans, hey, you suck. I don't like you. Deal with it. You know, I think his best line was when he ends it with going, I think you fans need to go on a vacation. Straight to hell. You can't beat that.
That's his go-to line now, and he's doing it, and it's going over. It's getting over. He's getting the heat, and I think that's great for him.
I was thinking about it last night, just to kind of take some of the pressure off him physically. Bring over Daniel Bryan, throw those guys in a tag team. I think that'd be great for the tag team division, those two together.
They would be the new two-man power trip.
Yeah, I would love to see those guys as a tag team. And honestly, you bring Daniel Bryan onto Raw, I wouldn't mind a tag team feud with Styles and Rollins against Daniel Bryan and Sami Zayn. That'd be a great tag team feud right there.
That would be some good in-ring work.
You know, so I think right there, I think that's something. And listen, you keep Rowan in their corner, and they got that bodyguard sitting out there. Those two can be a nice heel tandem right there. You know, they'll do their single matches. They can come together as a tag team, come up with some catchy name for the three of them. I think that's a great trio right there, those three. What do you think?
I think that's great. I'm agreeing with you on that. They would make a good tag team. It would lay off some physicality for both Bryan and Zayn to be in a tag team. Bryan's out with some sort of undisclosed injury, so maybe it's the head issue again.
And you'll give Rowan something to do.
Exactly.
I think he's a great bodyguard out there. But listen, like I said, I think Raw was a pretty good show. SmackDown tonight, I got it playing right now in the background. I saw the ending of it. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Anything else that I miss?
As far as SmackDown goes, I think what you were talking about earlier with Bayley, we're going to start seeing that. She came out tonight, interrupted Becky and Charlotte. There was no inflatable Bayley buddies. There was no slapping hands, no hugs. She was all business in there. She pushed Charlotte. They had a pretty decent match. I think this is an evolution of Bayley too, now that she's on SmackDown.
You know what? Getting her away from Sasha on two levels. I think just getting her away from Sasha on the wrestling level, and I'll be honest with you, maybe even on the social level, could be good for Bayley. Who knows what's going on backstage? Honestly, Bayley could be the most professional person in the world for all we know, and it's Sasha that's kind of leading her down this path of being an asshole. You know, I never heard anything negative about Bayley as far as as far as her backstage attitude. And even from fans who, who knows if they're telling the truth or not. But I'll be honest, as far as Bayley goes, Botcha goes, I've never heard anything honestly positive about her.
Everything that she puts out on that public view when she's meeting fans and stuff, if there's no camera there, heard she's a complete bitch.
Yeah. I've heard it also. So honestly, listen, like I said, I think Botcha's, cutting off her nose, spite her face at this point. I think Bailey's probably better off without her. It's getting to the point where I think Bailey has a shot at making it at this point as long as she turns heel. I think Botcha, she needs to just go away. We're at the point now where Botcha, I think, has worn out her welcome. She's a brat. She doesn't have the great in-ring work. That's one thing about Bailey. Her in-ring work is not as bad as Botcha's. It's not great, but it's not nearly how bad it is with Botcha.
Yeah, and the first plus side to the Superstar Shakeup, Elias getting a main event push in a feud with Roman Reigns.
I'm all for it. Listen, I've been an Elias fan for a while. I like to see him win Money in the Bank, which I've heard is with the route they're going to go down. I'm fine with that. If he does win Money in the Bank, that's going to just add to his character. If they do a full thing where he basically just teases it, like a lot of them have done. I believe Rollins did that, where Rollins held it for almost a year, as far as I know, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I think if he does something like Rollins does, where he kind of charges the ring and kind of fucks around a little bit here and there, I think that'd be awesome. I'm a huge fan of that. I like it. I'm with it. As far as a Roman Elias feud, another one. Hold off on it. Hold off on it. That's a good feud to have. Don't jump into it so quickly. It's even tonight where Kevin Owens turns on Kofi way too fast.
Yep.
Way too fast. Oh man, that what is that? That should have been stretched out for months. That's another one. That's a big 4 pay-per-view main event feud right there. Actually, I wouldn't say main event. I think Rollins, whoever he goes against, that should be your main event. But as far as that championship is concerned, that's a SummerSlam feud. That's a Survivor Series feud, a Royal Rumble Mania feud. I mean, Kevin Owens and Kofi, way too quick. Way too quick.
A week. You gave it a week. Like, what the frick is that?
They should have stretched that out for months. First of all, I enjoyed Kevin Owens as a face. It was kind of fun to watch. You knew he was going to turn on Kofi eventually. The whole key term there is eventually. You could have thrown Kofi in a feud with 100 other guys way, way, way too fast. Yeah, I'm not happy with that. Honestly, at this point, from SmackDown's perspective, you could have had a Kofi Randy Orton feud. I would have been fine with that. Hell, I would have been fine with a Kofi Jinder Mahal feud.
Yeah, they just I don't know what is with them that they feel they need to rush things.
Like, here's my issue with that. If it used to be from WrestleMania, you'd have your May pay-per-view, which is usually a bullshit pay-per-view. Then you would have your King of the Ring in June. Then July was bullshit. Then August was SummerSlam. So I just kind of feel like once they got rid of the King of the Ring and you got what you got now, the May pay-per-view is Money in the Bank. What's the June pay-per-view?
There's actually no – it was going to be Backlash. Right. They canceled Backlash because it was supposed to take place 2 weeks after the next Saudi Arabia pay-per-view.
Right.
And they felt that the term Backlash would not be good because of all the controversy that always comes out of Saudi Arabia.
What about what's the July pay-per-view?
Extreme Rules in Philly.
Yeah, we may have to go to that. I'll have to look into tickets and maybe go to that. But that's the whole point. You're basically going from WrestleMania to a bullshit pay-per-view in May to a bullshit card in June to another bullshit card in July, and then you got SummerSlam. So if you think about it logically, we're looking at 3 months worth of bullshit coming up.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be, like I said, you went from WrestleMania to bullshit to King of the Ring. And King of the Ring was always a good pay-per-view. We were both always big fans of that tournament. I don't know why they got rid of it. I always enjoyed the one-night tournament. I've always believed that, if Royal Rumble gets you the title shot at WrestleMania, King of the Ring should get you the title shot at SummerSlam.
And there's no reason they can't bring it back either, especially with the network.
Absolutely. So that's always a pay-per-view that I kind of feel like they kind of shitted on. Yeah, I mean, we're basically headed for 3 months of bullshit. But like I said, you could have gone Kofi with Orton, Kofi with Jinder for all I care. There was a lot of ways you could have gone with Kofi and saved it. I mean, you had it. So now you're going to go with Kofi and Kevin Owens. I mean, how long are they going to stretch it out for? I don't know. The truth of the matter is, By the time October rolls around, there's no way Kofi's going to be champion of SmackDown when they go to Fox. That's just not going to happen.
It's going to be Roman or Orton, in my opinion.
I think more than likely you're probably going to have your main event of your first SmackDown on Fox is probably going to be Roman against Orton. I can't think of anybody else they may bring out there. I could see him bringing The Undertaker out there. I could see him putting Cena out there to garner the ratings or whatnot. But if your main event's Orton against Roman Reigns, that's not going to shock me in the least bit. Wouldn't shock me if they threw a special guest referee in there, maybe John Cena, just to kind of add a little bit to it. But that's where they're probably going to be heading. I could honestly see a whole bunch of names from the past showing up. They're going to make a big deal out of it, obviously. And it is a big deal. I mean, if you think about it logically, it's really the biggest moment in the history of professional wrestling, where I don't think people realize this is the first time in the history of professional wrestling. And you know, old timers may tell you, oh, back in the 50s, Dumont Network, Capital Wrestling, which is basically precursor to the WWE, was on the Dumont Network. Okay. Back in 1955, I don't even think 1 million people had TVs back then. So, okay, it was quote unquote national TV, but it wasn't the way it is now. Like, this is truly, I got to go off on this because this is really the biggest moment in the history of professional wrestling where you're getting a weekly live TV show on national television in a prime time slot. Saturday night's main event, yeah, that was on Channel 4. That was at 11:30 at night on Saturday night. And that was once every 6 weeks, okay? You're talking about a national show every Friday night live on Fox. That's how big this is. Think about that. It's never happened truly where you have a national show. Yeah, USA Network is seen in probably every home. Listen, everybody has cable these days. But this is national TV. This is the same network that carries the Super Bowl, the World Series, college bowl games, college basketball games, boxing. Used to have UFC until they basically threw UFC off to get professional wrestling on there. This is Fox. It doesn't get bigger than this. This is the same level as CBS, NBC, and ABC. Even when they were on, what was it, the Channel 9, whatever they go, UPN, whatever it was, that's syndication. This is national television. Professional wrestling is going to be featured on a national TV network every Friday night live. Wrestling has hit its peak. It is now on the same level, as far as I'm concerned, as your 4 major sports: basketball, baseball, football, and hockey. It's on the same level as college basketball, college football, on the same level as NASCAR. As a matter of fact, I put it above UFC and boxing because guess what? UFC and boxing, UFC is on ESPN. Boxing, they pop up on network television every now and then. This is live every week, 2 hours Friday night. You're going to have professional wrestling. I don't even think the average wrestling fan understands how big this is. It doesn't get bigger.
Broadcast television live every week. Saturday night main event, you had those kind of things, but weekly for the next 5 years, that's tremendously huge. The eyeballs that are now going to see the product.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, listen, WWE has been part of the mainstream media now for a long time. I would say its presence has been known now since the 80s. It would pop up every now and then. It's kind of been a mainstay now, probably since PG has started, if you really think about it. You know, during the golden era, during Attitude and even Ruthless Aggression, yeah, it would pop up. But really, it was the PG era, John Cena, Nikki Bella, that really took wrestling to that next level as far as celebrity status goes. Now you're really going to hit that celebrity status. You know, forget the shows that are on USA with Total Bellas, Total Divas, Mrs. and Ms., you know, whatever you have. You know, and if you think about it, if this really works out when this 5 years is up, forget renewing SmackDown, Fox may grab Raw while they're at it. That's how big this is for wrestling.
Can you imagine?
Where professional wrestling, and I was thinking about that. Professional wrestling, when we first started watching wrestling, When I first started watching wrestling, they were still running WWF tapings out of Hamburg, Pennsylvania, in front of maybe 3,000 people in this dirty, dinky old barn. Then they went to the Mid-Hudson Civic Center, and I'd been to that arena. That thing is disgusting. And I'd watch it at 11 o'clock at night on Channel 9 after Ranger and Nick games, which is basically how I became a Ranger and a Nick fan. And depending what time the game would end is when you'd get wrestling. So if the game went into overtime and ended at 11:30, hey, that's when the wrestling would start at 11:30. And that's what you were watching, wrestling from these dinky, old, disgusting, dungeon-like arenas. Even, the NWA would come out of a studio. And even when it stepped up, you're still talking, center stage, whatever it was. You had the Disney tapings. I mean, look where wrestling went to. And then even when Raw and Nitro really got big, yeah, they were coming from nice arenas, but they were on USA and TNT. So think about where wrestling came from to where it is, where wrestling is being paid $2 billion over 5 years to be on 2 different networks. One of them is a national television broadcast over-the-air network. So granted, it may not be the product we love, but it's gotten that big now where it's being spoken about on the same network as the World Series and the Super Bowl.
And this is why they're not going to change the way they're doing things, because they're getting paid, so they think they're doing right. No matter how much we may hate how they're booking people or doing creative, I don't see it's even going to change even in October.
Well, you know what? I mean, listen, what we're seeing now the last 2 weeks, and it'll change over time. You have to assume there's going to be a couple of angles, is you're basically seeing a lot of random stuff thrown together. The in-ring work is not terrible for most of the roster. Right now I'm watching the women's match from SmackDown tonight. Kairi Sane, I've been a fan of since I saw her in NXT, and the girl from the Iconics. I believe that's Peyton, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Okay. They had a pretty good match. The in-ring work is not terrible. I'm not going to say it's NWA 1989 Steamboat, Flair, or, mid-90s ECW, or, even Ruthless Aggression, John Cena against Benoit, or even, CM Punk against John Cena. But I will say this, the in-ring work is pretty good. The angles need some work. The promos need some work. But overall, if wrestling was honestly that bad, I don't think Fox would even bother putting them on national television.
It's true.
So you have to look at it in that respect. I wish they would take a little longer with their feuds. I wish they wouldn't rush things. I wish they'd kind of wean things out. And listen, things may change when they go to Fox. Maybe they will wean things out. Stretch things out, if you will. I feel like now we're in a rush to get to a certain place. What that place is, hey, listen, only Vince knows. But I think if they slow things down a little bit and let feuds play themselves out, it'll make the product that much better. Like, for instance, I think if you look at the women's tag team division on SmackDown now, where you have the Iconics, you have Asuka and Kairi, and you have Mandy and
Sonya.
What's her name? Sonya. You can throw a decent feud right there, which you saw the beginnings of tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I think the women's division may need a few more tag teams, just to be honest. Yeah. 3 tag teams aren't going to get it done. But right there, those are 3 teams right there that could be a nice little 3-way feud. And I like what I'm seeing there. I kind of like the idea of the women's tag team division. I wish they would do the same thing with the men's tag team division. I think on Raw and SmackDown, you got your Viking Raiders. Then you have their Heavy Machinery on SmackDown. If somebody could tell me the difference in those 2 teams, I'd love to hear it. They're basically the same team if you think about it.
Which, by the way, listeners, that's who we were talking about a few weeks ago of the tag team in all yellow. It was Heavy Machinery that I couldn't think of. Just
right. So I think listen, I think if we can follow suit with the women's tag team division in both men's tag team divisions, and I've always said it, the tag team division in wrestling is very important. If you look at the biggest stars in the history of this business, most of them started out in a tag team. Tag teams is where you can find your future stars. Build up both tag team divisions on SmackDown and Raw. You know, there's no rule that says every single show has to center around both world titles. And I'm not going to call it a universal title. They're both world titles. I'm not calling it universal title anymore. It's a stupid name. You can, you know, you have Finn Balor on SmackDown. I'm fine with that. Put some rub on your IC title. You have Joe on Raw. Put some rub on your US title. But more importantly, let's get that tag team division going. Look at the golden era of tag team wrestling, your mid to late 80s. You had a Survivor Series match that involved 10 tag teams. Whether it was NWA/WCW or WWE, you were at stacked rosters tag team-wise. If you look at the NWA, the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express, Tully and Arn, the Road Warriors, the Russians, the Kansas Jayhawks, you know, at the beginning. Then later on, you had teams like Doom, the Steiner Brothers, the Freebirds. WWE, Hart Foundation, Bulldogs, Rougeos, Demolition, Powers of Pain, Young Stallions, Killer Bees. That's what you need again in wrestling. You need those real tag teams. And we haven't seen that in like 30 years. Mm-hmm. You know, put together 7 or 8 good tag teams for both shows, and I guarantee you're going to change both shows dramatically. Because if you think about it, let's say you really have nothing to throw together for that week's Raw. And we know that they're basically pulling together Raw, you know, at 7:30 at night these days. Throw out 3 or 4 good tag team matches, let them go 20 minutes each, and you just knocked out half your show.
And you're putting that in-ring work in, and that's what a lot of fans love. They love that in-ring work.
You know, it's not even that. If you know, like I said, tag teams is where you find your future stars, number one. But number two, I don't mind random teams of 2 guys that really aren't going anywhere right now, or that can like. Listen, a Daniel Bryan, Sami Zayn tag team, I think would be an awesome tag team. Awesome tag team. You know, on the other side of that equation, you know, Jinder's 2 little buddies, they can work. Throw them into the tag team division. You know, I didn't see any reason to break up the Bar. They were a good tag team. There was no reason to break them up. What are you going to do with Sheamus now? Throw him on SmackDown to a meaningless feud eventually with either Kofi or Finn? Okay, great. You're going to do the same thing with Cesaro on Raw? Okay, great. Leave them as a tag team. They were a good tag team. They worked well. Now, Ricochet and Black, they didn't belong together. I'm kind of glad they broke that up. But you know what? If you want Ricochet in a tag team, put him in a tag team with somebody. Bring somebody up to throw him in a tag team.
How about him?
I'll give you
him and Cedric Alexander.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. I was literally going to say that just now. Put him with Cedric Alexander. That's a good tag team right there.
At least it's the same style. They're the same high flyers. Black and Ricochet didn't even have the same in-ring style.
It made no sense to put it together. But I'll tell you what, Black on SmackDown, okay, put him in a singles run, but if it fails, you got to throw him in a tag team. You know, I just think you're at a point now where right now is a good time to build up both tag team divisions. I've always been a big tag team fan. I've always enjoyed tag team wrestling. You know, that was the one thing I always hated about WCW. And even Eric Bischoff says it's one of his biggest mistakes, if you listen to his 83 Weeks podcast, is not putting more work into that tag team division. He really shit on the tag team division for the longest time. And I don't blame him. That's actually a Japanese style. Little known fact is that Japanese wrestling is not huge with tag team wrestling. They have tag team champions, obviously, but they don't put a lot into it like they do in the United States. And that was always a big thing, man. Those big tag teams together, always been a big fan of that. I think if both shows can build up their tag team division, you'll get a lot more mileage out of it.
Hey, Avi, I have a trivia question for you. I want to pick your brain. I want to see how good your memory is. What was Sean Waltman's greatest WWE match?
Oh, man. Sean Waltman's greatest WWE match. I would have to go with him against Jarrett at SummerSlam in the hair match.
Oh, really? You wouldn't go with him and Brett on Monday Night Raw in '94?
That actually wasn't a bad match. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that one. Yeah. You know what? That's a good one there.
All right.
That definitely.
You ready for the trivia on this one? Can you tell me where that Can you tell me where that took?
You broke.
Hello? Can you tell me where that took place?
I know it was Pennsylvania.
Come on, say it.
What?
It was Bushkill, Pennsylvania. Hand to God.
Wow, I always knew it was in Pennsylvania. Yeah, that's actually considered one of the best matches in Raw history. Yeah, back then you weren't getting a lot of good matches on Raw, so it actually, that kind of makes sense. That would probably be the best match on Raw history.
I knew you'd get a kick out of that one.
I was like a big joke about Bushkill.
Well, Avi, you still know we have our website running, right?
Absolutely. Tell us all about it.
WillYouStopPodcast.com. From there, you can send us your email. We will put you on the list. You'll be able to ask us questions. You can link to all our social media on there. If you want to help build this podcast up, we're now accepting donations through PayPal. So everything that has to do with our podcast, Will You Stop the Podcast, you can access on WillYouStopPodcast.com. We're also on Facebook at Will You Stop Podcast. So join us in the conversation. Join us on social media. And this coming Sunday, you're going to get a full episode. Today was a bonus episode, but you're going to get our full episode this coming Sunday. Anything else?
Folks, if you have any questions, hit me up. Bring it to us. If you have any requests, let us know. We take requests. If you want us to cover a subject that's really annoying you, bothering you, or something you want to hear an opinion about, hit us up. Let us know. We take all requests. All requests. If we get 20 requests, damn it, we're going to hit on all 20 requests. Bring your requests. Bring anything you want. We will take care of it for you. We are here for the fans. We have absolutely no what's what I'm looking
topic
for.
We will not handle.
Besides that, keep in mind, folks, we have absolutely nobody sponsoring us right now. So we have nothing to lose. We're going all in. We will insult everyone. We will hype everyone up. We will tear people apart. Bring it to us. We do not have to be politically correct at all at this point. One day we may have to, but right now it is no holds barred. We can curse. We can talk about anything we want. Bring it on.
In that sentence alone, I had so many wrestling puns. You said we were all in? No, we're not officially all in. If they want to support us, we'll be all in.
Well, absolutely. Listen, AEW, if you need us to push you along,
no
we'll
holds barred. We'll rip them.
Hey, we don't shy away from it. Also, folks, remember, if you're local and want to get your local fix in wrestling, May 11th, the world famous Gleason's Gym. Johnny Rod's giving us his annual or his monthly show. It'll be May 11th at the Gleason's Gym. Come in, check out some of the more up-and-coming talent of wrestling. You never know, he may see on one of those cards. Could be the next Bubba Ray Dudley. Could be the next Taz for all you know.
Well, I've had enjoying this conversation like always, Avi, but I'm going to talk to you on Sunday because this is Will You Stop? This is our podcast. Make it your podcast as well.
Guys, enjoy the rest of your week.